You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to dive into instant commerce. So a longtime friend and also partners of the network as well, Matt Dornfeld from Feedonomics. He and I were chatting. I took a vacation a few weeks back, and just before that, we hit off on this topic, and it was one of those conversations where I got halfway in. I thought, man, I wish we'd have just hit record, and we would have had a podcast episode. But instead, here we are capturing it now. And so anyways, Matt, I'm going to kick it over to you. Do you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Feedonomics? That'd be awesome. And then we'll just kind of jump into the conversation as a whole.
For sure. Yeah. So my name is Matt Dornfeld. I'm a senior director and head of partnerships at Feedonomics. Feedonomics is an enterprise data feed management platform, which means we help brands and retailers take their product data, transform it, map it to a destination like a Google Ads or TikTok or Amazon or Walmart or any of those channels globally, and then help optimize that data to help it perform better, whether it's for ads or for marketplaces across all of those channels. And so Feedonomics is also owned by BigCommerce, which is an e-commerce platform, but operates completely independently and serves all sorts of customers across Shopify, Magento, Salesforce, and beyond.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. I mean, the team at BigCommerce too. Love that. We actually did a fantastic conversation on the B2B side. Mm-hmm. That's probably another podcast as a whole. We've just seen a ton of focus on B2B as the direct consumer side gets customer acquisition costs go up, shipping costs go up. It's a lot of people would rather ship a pallet LTL full truckload. But anyways, that's another podcast episode as a whole. So do you want to jump into like instant commerce? Because when we first started talking about it, the phrase was new to me. And, I spent a lot of my time talking just with brands and cool people in the space. And I was like, wait a minute, instant commerce. Do you want to jump into that? And we'll just kind of pick it apart and have a cool conversation over the next half hour or so. Sound good?
Absolutely, for sure. So instant commerce is candidly not a new category. I think there's a lot of energy going into it now in a way that's never existed before, which makes it feel really new. But instant commerce inherently is helping shoppers get the things they're looking for really, really, really fast. And you know who's done that for ages? DoorDash and Uber and anyone that looks like them around the world, right? You've got Rappi in Latin America. You've got Deliveroo elsewhere in the world. So there are platforms that have focused on helping shoppers find the things they want and then getting them delivered in insanely quick times. The difference now is that you've got more traditional retail partners like Amazon, and you name it beyond that, I'm sure over the coming months, that are helping those same merchants sell their products using the site traffic on the services they control. So I'm at Amazon.com in this example, and then transacting the order just as a shopper normally would on Amazon, but then routing that order into one of two options. So either the shopper could elect to have that product delivered to their home within 4-hour windows, which some of you have probably seen if you're a Prime user, or shoppers can elect to leave their house and go pick up the products they've purchased right at the brick and mortar around the corner from their home. So in effect, we're enabling an experience that should sound like buy on Amazon, pick up order in store, or buy on Amazon, receive product at my home from local store. And so what that enables is really quick or instant commerce that enables a product that you see online to be delivered to your fingertips in just hours, same day, right at your home. And I think that's going to unlock a lot of different opportunities for brands where now Amazon and Walmart and others in the future that pursue these kinds of programs will help drive traffic to a storefront owned by the brand, right? And that's something that these major retail partners have historically been almost blamed for competing with, right? There's this long history of, as Walmart encroaching on the space that a brick and mortar retailer may have previously, stood in. And I think we're starting to see a little bit more of a diversification where retailer services are starting to be almost modularized, right, and deployed to help brands just operate and exist in new places.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I know I've seen it, right? And it gives me the 4 hour window. I always think it's funny when it's like, do you want it delivered between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m.? Like, no, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a couple different options. I always find that one. I mean, obviously some people do. Maybe they're headed out the door and early and they want it that quick, but I always laugh. I don't want anybody showing up at 4 a.m. with the dog going off and waking up all the kids. But
Yeah.
that's, I mean, kind of what you're talking about is then it's the instant commerce piece is then for me as a shopper, allowing me to get the product even closer to the time I want it. Exactly.
For
Right.
sure. For
And
sure.
then being able to make that decision. So is this a global rollout? Are we in a test phase? Like, I know it's maybe I'm just in the right, zip code for it to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on for which platform, right? So obviously we're all shoppers here and we're all buying things in different places. We look for the products we need and want and think in areas that are relevant to us. And Amazon is one of those places for a lot of people, but so is Google. And so Google, right, as a traditional search engine, enables shoppers to go online and look for the things they're looking for and then understand exactly where those products exist in the world and then elect how they want to buy. So Google, for example, offers a program called local inventory ads, which is currently available globally and has been for a while, that enables a would-be shopper to search on Google, be targeted with an ad for a product that is available locally to them, which generally means quicker fulfillment times, and then either transact on the merchant's website, so actually being kicked over to a D2C site, or being directed to show up in store and actually purchase right in the front door. And really what this means for brands is an excellent way to blend online digital marketing with in-person experiences, which I think is a fantastic way to diversify your ad spend, but also spend in places that people are shopping, right? You got to meet your shoppers where they are, and they are on Google and they are on Amazon. And so showing up there in a really impactful and intelligent way is going to be worth it from a GMV perspective. So to your question, you're right on time. I think you've always been a Google user, I'm sure. It sounds like you're an Amazon shopper as well. I don't think you've missed the boat, but I do think retail is starting to really hit an innovation curve as it relates to these kinds of experiences. And you'll soon be afforded more options than you really ever had before. And what's most likely is when you start to really understand how fast you can get something, your likelihood to buy probably goes up. Would you agree with that? Like if you saw something you knew you get it between now and 2 p.m., you'd probably buy it if you otherwise didn't know when you'd receive something.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is, on the delivery I want to know when I'm getting it, right? It's that transparency side that Amazon does really, really well. We've did a podcast with Avi over at Pretty Damn Quick. And, he walks through this whole kind of, conversation is like, you've walked somebody through to the end where they want to buy the product. And then there's a trust factor. And that trust factor is I'm giving you cash. But I don't know when I'm going to get my product, but I'm assuming you're going to shoot it over to me. And I don't know where it's at. I can be tracking, but is it 5 to 7 business days? Like, could it be 4? But where Amazon has really done it well is it puts that, it shows me when it's going to show up.
Yep.
And it could just be 2 days, but I know it's going to show up in 2 days, or it could be this window. I just want to know when I'm going to get it. And sometimes, yeah, I want control over that. It would be 2 hours, 100%. If I'm going to be home in 2 hours, if I'm like in the office right now, maybe I don't want to your point, maybe I just want to pick it up on the way home. It's that transparency around, I actually have confidence of when I'm actually going to get the product rather than it being off in this, nether region for 5 to 7 days, whatever it might be. It's that transparency piece that I think converts a lot more people.
For
right.
Sure.
And, I've got 4 kids at home. There's times that I need a product that now,
Totally.
a volleyball practice and just ruined the current knee pads or whatever. Right. Or needs a new pair of shoes. The sole's got to, whatever it is. Like,
Totally.
I don't have a week. So if I can go and I can determine, hey, I can pick this stuff up in 2 hours. Like, let's roll.
Yeah.
Obviously meaningful. Obviously meaningful.
Yeah, it's transparency, it's confidence, it's choice, right? And these are all really valuable things to shoppers. And I think there's always the opportunity to get in your car and go to GNC. That'll never change, right? There's always going to be a place that you can go and drive to. But what we're trying to do, and I think what instant commerce is trying to do, is figure out from an innovation perspective, how do we shrink that timeline from I'm thinking I need something to I'm looking for something to I found the thing to now I got it, versus the more opportunistic process, which is I'm out driving, it's Saturday, oh, I need protein, I'm going to go to GNC. And so I think there's a little bit of almost reverse engineering the behaviors here, figuring out, okay, well, where do people look to buy when they're on that surface? Like, where and how do they search? Once they've gone through that process, they're starting to look for brands that they recognize. Now what? What would they expect of that brand? And I think that's where brands today have a really excellent opportunity, which is you can show up really differently and offer, to your point, like a really impactful experience that encourages the purchase because you're making it so ridiculously easy to say yes. And that's the core of profitability, right? It's helping people feel great about purchase that they're making and making sure that they're purchasing things that drive your margin, right? Like, and help you be successful as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see this shift coming, and I think we're finally hitting it now. A little, like, as mentioned at the beginning, is there's the direct to consumer for brands for the past few years. It was, I want to get them to my direct consumer site. I want to get that first party data. I want to own them as a customer. But what you've seen over the past, year and a half is this huge focus on profitability.
Mm-hmm.
When they do that deep dive and they look at the actual marketing, the customer acquisition cost, the shipping, the actual personnel cost, the platform cost, all the plugins, they start to take a step back and like, wait, I know we get to charge retail, but after we've taken care of everything else,
what's that?
A lot of times, I mean, if that basket isn't over $40, you're not making a lot of money at all.
Right.
And so now we have this pendulum swinging where, do I drive them to Amazon or marketplaces as a whole, which is another whole part of the conversation, is this huge refocus on marketplaces and marketplace listing, and then the accuracy of all of that, which we can jump into from the Feedonomics side for sure, because you guys are the tops in that area. But this other option, like you're talking about, is when does the customer want it? Because if you're driving it to a platform, you don't always control it. But if you give them that offer of, hey, you can be at a local retailer and pick it up in an hour, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's a no-brainer. Yeah, you do it on your phone, right? You're in the car, you pay a partner in the next seat, and you can just make a decision. I think it's going to be awesome for more of a widespread brand adoption perspective. And I don't know. In general, it feels, when I've looked at brand strategy, maybe I'll put it this way: I've always rejected, since early in my career in commerce, that Amazon is just flatly the enemy. That to me has always been a silly statement. Like, considering, again, back to my earlier point, we're all shoppers here. Are we just going to ignore what's going on Amazon? Is that healthy as a brand to just flatly ignore something? And from our perspective, the answer is no, completely no. That it's the wrong way to think about it. Now, that's not to say you should just go into Amazon or any channel without a strategy. I'm not saying dump your whole catalog on the marketplace. Maybe that's not correct, but simply ignoring opportunity, to your point, especially in a capital compressed environment, a focus on profitability and margin growth and all the healthy things that help businesses exist for the long term, slamming the door in the face of a channel that can drive you growth thoughtfully, I think would be an unwise decision at this point. And I would highly encourage at least an evaluation that there may be a time, maybe now, where putting certain products online, especially to take advantage of an opportunity like the one we're talking about, whether that's with Amazon or with Google or others, would be absolutely worth at least the time invested to figure out if it's a fit. And I think, if you're a brand and you're just considering expanding and maybe even just doubling down on the channels you've already invested in, like a Google, it's worth expanding your scope or the aperture of the services you're willing to to contemplate, because there might be a lot of opportunity left on the table that you're just simply not thinking about, which is a place where, your team at, BWG hosted dinners can be really impactful to generate that conversation. And then in Feedoland, and I'm sure at other, competitor vendors, we're having active conversations around how merchants should consider channel adoption and what goes into the right mix with the right SKUs at the right time.
It's, I don't know. It's funny. It's frustrating all at the same time. Is that, just as fast as technology is changing right now, your digital strategy now has to adapt.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You better be comfortable with change, very, very rapid change.
Yeah.
Because, all I do is talk to brands all day, every day, and they're, every vertical of every size. And this conversation has not popped up until recently, and yet it's popping up over and over again. I say recently, I mean like in the past 6 months. And it seems like there's these new topics that are coming out, and these, I don't want to say it's not a complete strategy shift. It's you have to constantly be readjusting. This isn't the old days of there's a planogram and once a year you got to worry about it and it's coming around. This is every 3 to 6 months, you're doing a reevaluation of your digital strategy, adding in things like this. What does your retail media look like? What's working, what's not, paid search, paid social, what are your shipping costs? Are you using a 3PL? Are you not? Like this every 3 months.
Yeah.
You have to take a step back. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about, North Star strategies. It's like, where are we trying to take ourselves as a company when we go as a planning exercise? If the goal is, keeping it simple, if the goal is $5 million in revenue growth and we're a $3 million company, that's a pretty significant jump. The way we get to 5 might evolve 8 times throughout the year, but you're going to want to make sure that across the board, from the customer, service associates, all the way to the CEO, founder, whomever, that we're all pulling in the same direction. And I think channel adoption, investment in certain channels, et cetera, that's all part of that, right? It's like if operations and the supply chain team are disagreeing with the marketing team and where we're placing investments, that's going to impact how we handle order volume and distribution and things like that. And you really need a cohesive perspective across the brand. And that's why when we're making our decisions, we make sure to include heads of operations, heads of finance, et cetera, because you need to make smart investments. They have to be guiding towards whatever that North Star is. And I think if you're a brand and you don't have one of those, let's work on that, right? That's an area where your vendor partners or your agencies or whatever can also play a role in helping you kind of parse through what can be, to your point, a very complex set of questions.
Yeah. Do you, I want to jump back just to the Google piece a little bit, because it seems like Google has tried to push the Google shopping piece so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I haven't seen it take off where you think it would have been, in my opinion, it would have been Amazon and then potentially Walmart or Google going head to head for spot number 2. Mm-hmm. And yet that spot number 2 is so far behind where Amazon's at. It's like they can't quite figure it out. And I want to push Walmart to the side for now and just like think about like the Google standpoint. Do you see a ton of brands now winning on Google? And does this new, if we think about instant commerce and this strategy as a whole, is that shifting from Google Shopping just into ads that your brands are taking it over on their own?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the key, to your point, Google has attempted a variety of strategies to make the checkout story work really well. And I think they're still iterating on what's right for Google as it relates to the shopper behaviors that they're so familiar with. But to your point, the focus is on, in the case of instant commerce, is on local inventory ads. And so there is no checkout happening on Google. So for that reason, Google is just an accelerant to D2C volume or brick and mortar volume. And I think both are valuable, right? Retail is expensive and hard. And so if you have a brick and mortar location, sure, everyone shares the same problem, which is how do I get more bodies in that store more often? And I think Google can be an excellent support as part of that strategy. And for that matter, they're not the only ones, right? Bing also offers local inventory. Who else? Facebook, right? The Meta properties, they have versions of local inventory. There are other platforms that will continue to evolve this over time. And I think as a vendor who supports feed management, my job is to try to figure out where these platforms are trying to go themselves with these products, so that I can represent them, to the people we meet, at dinners that y'all host or elsewhere in the market. I think Amazon is coming at it from the other side, which is they've been a marketplace. They're a roaring ads partner, right? They're huge, but the whole local piece is new to them in the grand scheme of commerce, and I think that's what's super exciting. I think this can be a real pillar for them especially as they work with larger clients too. I mean, you can consider the kinds of brands that would benefit from this at scale, and that should open some doors for Amazon in a way that likely hasn't in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I've been picking your brain for a while. Like, any questions for me?
Yeah,
more than happy to answer any. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think in general, to your point about brand conversations, I mean, what would you say from a planning perspective? Like, what are those major concerns that you're hearing about most often? Like, what are those topics that you find are bubbling up the most frequently?
Yeah, I would say I'll start with the number one still, which has been there for 3 to 4 months now, which is profitability. But then how do we break that down? And how do you solve for it? Because you can't just say solve for profitability, because there's all the little pieces that feed into it. And so what's tough is, I mentioned on the direct to consumer side, but you can't just get rid of that channel. Right? There's so many things that are gained from a direct to consumer website, including plugging that into, the Amazon Marketing Cloud and being able to hit their DSP and drive traffic back to your direct to consumer site. If it's profitable. If it's not, then you're doing the same thing, but you're driving it to Amazon. So it's figuring out, what do we do with our direct to consumer site and how can we make it profitable? It's unique because there's a lot of new AI tech tools that are coming out right now. We've seen like a weeding out of the chaff of all the little people had, jumped up it seemed like everybody and their brother developed an AI platform.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty relevant at e-tail, that AI was the buzzword that everybody's sick of. Like, I mean, if there was a drinking game where every time somebody said AI, nobody would have left the first talk. They would have stumbled out the doors. And so profitability, the tech that's popping up that can help solve it, that's actually AI driven, that's inefficient. They're asking, hey, what is that stuff? Amazon, that marketing cloud, how can we utilize that to be more targeted with our ads? What else? Like I said, like, how do we develop lifetime value of a customer and long-term customers and people coming back? And so those are the topics that people are trying to solve for. And what's interesting is, still the number of retail media networks that are out there, like, seems to keep growing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out, what does that budget look like for next year? Like, if I'm planning for 2025, how much do I put into traditional paid search and social? They're segmenting out Amazon and Walmart retail media. And then they're looking at, how do I handle everything else as a whole in retail media? And what does that look like? And nobody knows. Nobody knows. There's going to be a bunch of different experiments going on. That's what.
I think there's a lot of consolidation going on in retail media right now, and a lot of strategic partnerships. Got the Microsoft Criteo piece and beyond, and there's only so many dollars to spend, right? And I think that's the other piece too, that I'm sure a lot of these brands are thinking about if they're talking about margin profile and profitability. As it relates to profitability, I guess to dig into that a little bit with you, what are you finding that, like, what is the conversation? Is it that we're simply not profitable enough and we're looking to cut, or we're not growing fast enough? We figured out maybe our bottom line a little bit, but now we just need to accelerate top, and that's a problem because consumer behavior is changing. Are you finding that there are themes that maybe are popping up within that?
Yeah, I would say the number one is the retail media side. is there's no measurement tool. And everybody out there right now is like grading their own homework, right? I mean, everybody's experienced, if you're selling on Amazon or Walmart, you've experienced oh, yeah, I just dropped $100,000 into a campaign. Hey, the halo effect has got you a 15 ROAS.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't go up, like that product didn't go up 15 times the amount that, like, how do you even figure that? Like, oh, well, you see, and you're grading your own homework. This is a really cool episode. If anybody's listening, if you want to go back and look at it, Megan Caroon from Claire Data, where we kind of tackled that. I should probably have her back on. Is the measurement of the retail media networks and what's working and what's not compared to traditional paid search and social. Money's just going in, and there's no transparency on the data that's coming out or a confidence that what's coming out is accurate. And so when you figure that's kind of a sunk cost, you can't get the actual return, on investment that you want to get. And so are you profitable or not? That is probably the biggest that people are trying to look at. I mean, Amazon, I just bring up Amazon because traditionally we can jump into the direct consumer, which I kind of said is, unless you're over $40, people are realizing it costs so much to ship.
Yeah.
You better find a 3PL, like a digital age 3PL, distributed logistics, seller fulfilled prime, same day, 1 day, 2 day, like you got Da Vinci micro fulfillment or somebody that can do it for you. So that's the direct to consumer side. But if we think about from the Amazon standpoint, like Jeff Bezos came out, like he said, your margin is my opportunity. Like what, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
They just been hitting away at it. So people trying to solve for chargebacks, where Amazon is just grabbing it. Rate negotiations, direct import. What I would say is I'm rattling this off. It's a holistic view that we hit the pandemic, e-com ramped up. There was this fear of missing out. So people signed up for everything. They overhired. And now there's this pendulum swinging back. And so we see companies reducing headcount in their digital teams, in my opinion, way too much. And then they're now slashing budgets around how much they're going to spend with off Amazon, off Walmart, retail media networks, which I think is going to be a little bit too much. And there's this holistic view on where can we save money, which is a good thing. I just think a lot of times they cut a little too deep. Trim back a little.
There's a lot of biting of fingernails, right? And I've been guilty of it, right? Where you do maybe cut a little bit too deep and you pay for it. And I think, like all things, eventually there will be a revert to the mean. And I think that's why you do this. You do the thinking now, right? You consult your vendors. I say this at basically every public speaking event that I'm asked to speak at, which is, if you're not getting the proactive ideas from your vendors and your partners, fire them.
Yeah,
like easy. Because there is another vendor who's out there. I'm biased in saying it's Feedonomics, but in general, there are a lot of us out there who are genuinely willing and motivated to help brands figure that out. And in my little corner of e-commerce, the way I can help with that is around what channels should we be investing in? How much? How? Right? And I think that's where, it sounds like these are a lot of conversations y'all are having as well, but
it's dead on. It's okay. If I'm going to trim out direct to consumer or driving traffic there, how do I make up for that? And the interesting thing, which we should chat about just a little bit, is that multi-channel, like I need to hit a way more marketplaces. And so we see in the US, this is a conversation, right, where there's less money being spent by fewer people. So to make up for that, you can't just overspend on ads. You actually have to reach a broader audience. And how do you do that? It's hitting other marketplaces. Because again, as we chat about the direct to consumer side, how do we hit then other marketplaces with everything that we currently have to just expand our opportunity? But I'd love to hear like best practices around that as a whole, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a spectrum of this, right? There is such thing as showing up and existing and just the wrong or too many of the wrong marketplaces, and that I wouldn't advise that. I think for us, when we're evaluating fits for new channels, and we're helping, basically we're responsible for helping brands get married to new channels and making sure that fits a long-term good one. And so we look at, is the category match there, right? If you're an auto merchant, don't sell on Wayfair. Should seem obvious, but sometimes it's not. And so there are strategic and thoughtful bets and like calculated risks you can take. Some of them are just not going to make sense. And so when you're pursuing, channel selection, you want to make sure that you feel pretty confident that your shopper would shop there to find things that you would sell. Off the back of that, when you go to invest in a new channel, you can't just show up. You have to make sure your catalog is in the best possible place it can be, and make sure you're ongoing feeding that data into the marketplace to make sure that it's showing up in the best possible place to drive conversion. So that when you or me, we go onto that PDP and we see the thing we want, and then we realize it's actually not the thing we want, it's miscategorized. That's a loss of conversion. We want to prevent against that, especially early days in a marketplace. And then also take advantage of the services that marketplaces offer. Walmart is doing a fantastic job attaching Walmart fulfillment services across its existing seller cohort. And it's driving GMV lift, material GMV lift when sellers use that service. Amazon has a killer ads program. It's massive, right? It's bigger than many countries' GDPs combined. And if you're not investing in Amazon ads, although clearly many people are, that's a miss. And so if you're going to show up on Amazon for the first time, you can't just show up without ads. And so when you start to buy into a marketplace's flywheel, and again, done so thoughtfully, you can start to reap the benefits of investments the marketplace is making, because they want to make sure they're helping sellers win, because your stickiness drives their GMV. It also gives a reason for shoppers to continue to come back to a marketplace. But the more you lean into their services, the more additional opportunities open up. And so Amazon today, the instant commerce program, is another area of that. If you're a brick and mortar retailer with 50, 100, hundreds of locations, and you sell on Amazon today, and you understand that there's more to this flywheel here, where I can spend on ads to drive to a PDP that shows Aaron a 2-hour delivery window for a thing, that's going to work. That's going to drive the conversion. And you got to do the math to make sure that that's worth the investment. But investing in the right services with these mega partners, assuming they're aligned to your category and where your shoppers would look for your products, can yield easy wins. Easy in air quotes, perhaps, but simpler wins than other riskier bets. And I'd say overall, last comment on that was just from a maturity standpoint, Europe is niched right down, right? They've got marketplaces for everything over there. It's very common. The US is not like that. And so what we're seeing too is a development that's been going on for years now, where there are a lot of multi-vendor marketplace partners. So the Miracles of the world, the marketplaces of the world that are helping bigger retailers set up their own marketplaces, which are niching down on particular categories or even subcategories for very ready to buy, willing sets of shoppers. Macy's, Nordstrom's, Albertsons, Tesco in the UK. These are places that have very, loyal shoppers that will look for things on those places specifically. And so if you're one of those retailers, it makes sense to double down on those strategies to encourage more of, to your point, to generate more of that LTV across a surface that people are familiar with.
Yeah. That expansion piece, I don't know how people aren't looking at it, but it just, this idea that, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And I'm just going to add on that this is a new way that everybody has to start looking at it, that I do believe every 3 months you need to reevaluate. It's not going to slow down. This is the new pace. And when it's very difficult for people running e-com as a whole to try to plan. I mean, so think right now we're, middle end of August, 2024, and they're being asked to plan January through December of next year and what their plan looks like.
Yeah.
When there will be 4 strategic shifts between now and then. Might be TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. As that starts to blow up,
you just don't know. Yeah. But it goes back to the North Star. Like if I do that work too, I'm sure you've got a vision for BWG. Like, where do you want to take this thing? And as long as you feel really good about that, knowing that it could change over time, but how you get there will continue to zig and zag and be ready for that adjustment. And I'm sure you've got a close network of folks that you lean on to help guide you in some of those decisions, just like we do.
My own little personal board of directors. That's right.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, you should put one together. You should totally put one together. Just things that people you trust that you can bounce ideas off from. You can call anytime. Just say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And then flip it. They rely on you for the same thing. Yeah. Super.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know. I think, but to your point though, with the change comes a lot of excitement. And I think, actually, I know I've not been bored since day one of joining this industry and getting involved. It's, conferences are just reunions now with a lot of friends from the space. It's not like I'm not going to lose hair over the stress here, right? There's no risk to that. And so I'm just here. I'm enjoying the ride, and I love the challenges that come with meeting, these problems and
I think to that point, I think that the best marketing around an event was a couple years back when Shop Talk came back after the pandemic, and it said, the e-commerce's family reunion.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a great show. It was
awesome.
Yeah.
People were ready.
Yeah. And that's where I don't attend a ton of the talks. I mean, I moderate for a living, so I sometimes get hypercritical around the questions and how they're being asked and how deep it goes. But man, the vendor floor and just the dinners we do and hanging out in the main hall and grabbing a Starbucks with old friends, it's awesome. So, and that's where, I mean, it's the networking piece, right? And I think that's why these, like a Shop Talk has stayed strong. They're doing the Chicago one this year.
Yeah,
is that they promote the interactions. Oh, I think a lot of times, I mean, there's great content, there's great speakers, but I think a lot of people go because I get to network and knowledge share with other brands and people in my space, and maybe meet a new vendor that's really, really cool.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm fully remote, right? So this is an opportunity to, the extrovert in me wants to be out in the wild and just shaking hands and learning stuff. And Shop Talk's a fantastic show for that. There's a lot of niche shows too that are much smaller. We found a lot of success in having just great conversations with brands, vendors alike. That like eTail West, it's only a few thousand people, but
love that show.
Right?
Love the show.
Incredible show, really well done, and lots of brands, a lot of great conversations. It's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, I'd probably reach out. I mean, as we're going to get to the end here, just I'll probably reach out to them. I should do an episode with each of the founders of the Shop Talk e-tails, and just have them come on and highlight like what they think is the best thing about the shows. Maybe
totally.
the team. Yeah. So, well, Matt, this has been super fun.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Of course. Pleasure.
Super
Next time with beers.
Always love catching up.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody for listening in. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks everybody. Take care.
Thanks
Until the next episode comes out. We'll see you.